Hey, Coach Candace here with some running mindset tips that you might find helpful as you train and prepare for an upcoming race or perhaps a challenge within running or some other endurance event for yourself that you might find helpful, and ways you can approach training as well as your challenge or race day. And I'm going to kind of use my run from today as somewhat of a case study. So in my run today, the goal was to run 3 miles. But I also have in mind a run I have coming up on Sunday, which is to do a 10K or 6.2 miles for time. And I haven't really been pushing for faster paces in training. I mean, I am working on getting gradually faster, but I'm training for an ultra marathon. So really focusing on running for the long haul, but a more sustainable pace. But then, like, to me, I also love challenges for myself within training. And when I saw a 10K, I felt like, oh God, now I got to actually like push myself towards something. But then also started wondering, like, I wonder if I can PR my 10K, and which I haven't done a 10K since April of 2021. I mean, I have run longer distances than that, but not that particular distance in itself. So I was just curious, and looking back at my data, my average pace for that 10K was 9:39 a mile. And although I have been pushing myself to gradually get faster, and I have been hanging more in the tens and somewhat in the nines lately, it's still questioning whether, can I do that this Sunday or not? Not sure. But let's, before we get to that, but let's talk through some things. So let's talk about training itself. So many times people think like to train is to just go all out all of the time. But really training is for both practice and for challenging yourself. So building up to, in my training sessions, I am practicing different paces. So I've practiced, can I hang at 11 or better? Can I hang at, gradually improving my pace? Can I now hang at 10:40 or better, or 10:20 or better? Some days it happens, some days it does not. I want to say more often than not it does, but still do have those training sessions where it does not. But I've spent a lot of time practicing that. Like, I'm not practicing going all out and then falling off a cliff, and then before you know it, my initial goal of, let's say, being 11 or better ends up being like 12:30 or 13 per mile. I'm practicing time at different paces, even if it sometimes feels slow, to gradually get faster. Like, I'd rather practice negative splitting versus going all out and failing. But also for challenging yourself. So let's say, for example, I'd rather find out how a certain pace feels in training before I strive to do that pace on competition day. So kind of like a non-running example, but I was preparing for a CrossFit competition a few months back, and the opening workout was a 750-meter row, rest 1 minute, and then it was like pull-ups and sandbag carries. So in training, I wanted to feel what a 750-meter all-out pace felt, and if I could recover enough to do well in the pull-up part. And in training, found out no, that was not the case, and my pull-ups were trash. And so I knew not to do that on competition day. So similarly, like, I'd like to know, and I'll show you an example here on how a certain pace feels, and would that be something I could sustain or recover from and still continue on. So to kind of jump ahead a little bit, so my 10K PR pace, as I mentioned earlier, was 9:39 per mile. So today, mile one, I told myself to hold like 9:39 or better, and I ended up holding 9:34. Mile two, again, my goal, like, once I see my watch, was like 9:35, so I was like, okay, I got to hold 9:35 or better, and ended up holding 9:30 per mile. Now that last mile, because again, with the mindset, like, it's only one more mile, which again is kind of like a strategy to minimize things. It's only this, like, like, for example, members of my gym have a competition coming up, and many of them are breaking a set of 10 burpees into 5. Like, just tell yourself, like, it's only 5 burpees. And in my mind, that's like, it's only one more mile. So instead of thinking, geez, I have all this time to go, instead of making that distance so much bigger in your mind, kind of making it small. So that's what I kind of told myself for that last mile, like, I only have one more mile to go. So my final mile, I did did complete that in 9 minutes and 1 second. But now, again, learning how you feel with that, like I know how I felt at the end, and yes, it got challenging, but I could not go from 9:34 to 9:30 to 9:01 in my 10K attempt this coming Sunday, because that was like a tough, and it was kind of like, it was like more of an exertion beforehand, and that would not be something that I can recover from halfway through and still continue to go less. Like any progress I had made it towards a better time would probably be lost, and that I really had to slow down in the back half of that run. But again, time and training at different paces helps you to I call it know thyself. So like, again, I know how I felt and I know how I could push. But again, learning about yourself, like you're not going to do a week of training of like, oh yeah, I know myself well this time. It's going to take like months, weeks to months of practice at a given pace and recovering from that and repeating it to get to know yourself. So, so just settle in, buckle up, and training is where you're learning about yourself. So, but when it does get tough, because I want to say, like towards like that final mile, it does get tough physically. In that, again, my breathing is heavy. You think like, oh God, I still have this, still a bit more to go. But what I like to do whenever it gets tough, and this is even like a strategy I used back in my marathon back in September, is I call it a systems check. And I almost think like with my nursing background, like we call it the head to toe assessment to try to not miss anything when you're looking at your patient. Similarly, I do a systems check. So I want to say that last half a mile where I was really like pushing myself, because again, like in my mind, I say I'm almost done, like it's only half a mile. But I'm starting to think about like, okay, how do I feel? Because then again, like now your mind starts chirping at you and then wants you to think like, hey, this is really tough right now and you need to stop. So similarly in my marathon, when I got to like near the half portion, my mind was chirping at me and I really wanted to stop. These are some things that I go through. So kind of going head to toe, like, okay, like my arms feel fine, like I'm really good there. Or how do my legs feel? Like even today, like honestly, like my legs don't hurt. Like I'm not feeling the challenge in my legs. Let's say my hips feel fine, my back feels fine. Like all of this feels fine right now. Mentally, yes, I might be challenged mentally. As far as not feeling like I can continue as strongly, but really like I'm doing okay. Breathing, like I kind of acknowledge like, okay, yeah, I might be breathing a little heavier, but also in my mind, like I only have a half mile to go. For me, that might have been like between 4 to 5 minutes. Like it's gonna be over soon. So this is not a feeling that is gonna go on for the next hour. Like this is gonna be over soon. So I can push through knowing like it's gonna be over soon and I'll be okay. Like within 10 minutes of stopping, like I'm gonna be fine. So kind of doing that systems check and really just thinking like, okay, like I know my mind is telling me otherwise, but how do I really feel? And kind of going through and assessing that. And being that everything does in fact feel fine, like then I can continue. So these are some things that, again, to summarize, that I go through in training as far as like how I approach that mentally. Like I love to use training to think like what if. So when I think about now my upcoming 10K run for time on Sunday, I believe it perhaps a PR is potentially there. Because when I think about how I felt about hanging around 9:30 to 9:34, which again would be below the average of like my 9:39 pace, physically I felt fine. Breathing was a little heavier, but not incredibly labored. Like there was someone here in the gym with me and I was talking periodically, but still maintaining focus. At the end of the day, like I really was comfortable. And if I had to continue to push at that, I believe that I can. But right, I can't push at that last final mile. But again, like you're kind of like saving a little bit for that final mile. So I guess TBD as far as Sunday, if I can PR that, we'll see. Each day a new day. But ultimately, again, my confidence to approach that comes from training and time and practice in training and challenging myself, but also spending more time practicing versus competing, and and again, just getting to know myself and how I feel and respond at different paces. So all in all, I hope you found that helpful as far as your upcoming training and approach. These are things I try to share with my clients who may be doing an endurance event, but also applies to some other more CrossFit or kind of like functional fitness type events as well. Many of these same principles apply. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And thank you very much for watching.